Distance of all the class.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. So today I wanted to go over some brief information about how fasting creates a state of balance in the body and in the mind. And I wanted also to just for people to feel free with asking questions as those questions come up. You don't have to necessarily share personal information because this is going to go up on YouTube. But if you just ask questions to clarify what is being said based on what you're just naturally curious about, that will help with hopefully clarifying what others may be confused about as well as they're watching in the future. So today we'll be talking about detoxification on a holistic level and about how fasting creates balance on different levels of the health of the being. So just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. We're going to be talking about why we fast and how we facilitate the changes that come about when fasting, which can be stressful. So we have to learn how to care for the body, how to care for the mind, and deal with those changes, facilitate them. And we're going to be talking about health and how the fasting creates that state of balance in the body on 3 different levels. We're going to be talking about the emotional level, which is sort of related to how the hormones work. So hormonal balance. We're going to be talking about physical balance and physical detoxification and that process of facilitating the detoxification of the physical body. And then we're going to also be talking about the mental detoxification process or the spiritual transmutation process. So bringing all of these together, I could say that this is my view of how fasting creates that holistic state of balance in the body-mind. So can you all see this?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me... Okay, can you see my cursor?
The red marker, yes.
Now, so the 3 levels we're talking about are emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. And it's just for the sake of this conversation that I'm dividing these. In reality, you can't actually divide these as they're all sort of interacting and affecting one another. But just for the sake of conversation and understanding this and just going into it mentally, I'm dividing it into these 3 layers of health. So the emotional level we'll be talking about is related to the hormones, the physical level related to the detoxification of the physical structure, and the spiritual level or the mental level being the transmutation of the thought patterns that can create stress in the body and the mind. Oops. All right. Can you all see this in its totality, this whole diagram?
Yes.
Okay, so I got this from, I didn't make this myself. I got this from a website called Ecosystems United. Kind of stole this from them, but I think it sort of gives a simplistic view of what's going on with the hunger hormones. When we're fasting, what we're doing is trying to create balance within these hunger hormones first, and that creates a whole cascade of responses within all the other hormones in the body that these hormones will be affecting. So primarily, a lot of what we're looking at is affecting the hormone insulin. Now we're going to come back to this. But looking at this chart, we can see what's happening over here with the insulin. So this, we're looking at in this chart, time after eating. This is when you're eating food, 12 hours and through a fast, 24, 36, all the way to 72 hours after eating.
Where is the insulin?
So this here is the average insulin level in the blood. Yeah. So right after eating, you can see the insulin spikes. And as you're fasting, obviously, the insulin level comes down. And what we know, of course, is that the fastest way to bring insulin levels down is to fast. We also know that what happens when we have chronically high insulin levels, if we're just constantly eating and constantly spiking the insulin levels up high, is what this does is prevents the detoxification pathways from being able to clean up the body. It prevents metabolic buildup from actually being able to come out of the system.
But what if we eat little, not like a humongous amount of food? The insulin spike will be maybe lower?
Yeah, but then basically this is never allowing for the body to actually get into a fasted state and for the insulin levels to completely come down.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's also affecting other hunger hormones. So for example, ghrelin, right? Ghrelin is a hormone that's released from the stomach in order to make us hungry at times when we normally eat. So ghrelin is it's released based on what our routine is and based on what our body is expecting, based on what our habits are. So, for example, if you're used to eating every morning at 10, then every morning at 10, you're going to get hungry. Naturally. And that hunger feeling is coming from a ghrelin spike. This is that hormone that's released from the stomach to say, okay, look, this is when you normally eat now. What's good to note about ghrelin is that if you just wait a couple hours, that ghrelin release will stop and the hunger will actually go away. That's why, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you're fasting at first, you might get really hungry. And that's the ghrelin release. But after a few hours, it's almost like you get so hungry, you don't even feel hungry anymore. Yes, that's a way of describing it, right? That feeling of getting beyond hunger, beyond that point of hunger. And that's when the ghrelin wears off. And you no longer feel hungry, and that's when actually the fasting starts. And this is when you start getting that cascade of the hormones being balanced out. So it will start with the subsiding of the ghrelin response. And this will allow for the insulin levels to start coming down. It'll allow for a whole host of other hormones to start reacting to this change in the hormonal expression because of the digestion stopping, as well as because of the metabolism changing, because of the insulin levels coming down. And so because the insulin levels coming down, what insulin is doing is constantly telling the body to store. And so when the insulin levels come down, finally the body stops saying store and starts releasing what it's holding on to. And so that's why when someone is constantly having a very high insulin level, for example, for diabetics who need to inject insulin, right? The insulin level is going to be higher than for most individuals constantly. And that's why it's so difficult to lose weight, because they're constantly telling the body to store. And so the way to get the body to start losing what it's storing and holding on to is to get the insulin levels to come down. And that begins with fasting. Again, there's a lot of information in these slides. They're actually coming from here, MDPI. This is a journal entry database online from journal Nutrients, volume 14, issue 3, Effects of Intermittent Fasting on Cardiometabolic Health and Energy and Metabolism Perspective, from 2022. Again, it's from the journal Nutrients. And so I got a few slides from this study just to show what's happening metabolically in the blood and in the hormones as we're fasting in the first 72 hours. So that's mainly what this study is focusing on.
So 1 second, Shiv, leave it
Yeah.
there. So as we are fasting, blood energy substrates. So the glucose, what's happened to the glucose here? Why is it going up? Of course.
So this is right after eating.
Acha.
Yeah. So the glucose and the triglycerides are going to be going up, right?
Initially.
Yeah. Ketones will come down, right? The fatty acids will come up as you start to digest the fats, right? But also as the body starts to get into fasting, then the ketones will start being produced.
Okay. So
right?
if
the free
if
fatty
people,
acids will come up. Sorry?
if people are doing that, what is that called? Keto diet?
Yeah.
What's it called? The
Ketogenic diet, yeah.
Ketogenic diet. It'll probably show the same ketones going up in the urine and in the body, right? I think.
I mean, yeah, but that's that's what you're doing with fasting, right? You're not eating any carbohydrates when you're fasting.
Okay.
Yeah. The
One question,
ketogenic
Shiv.
diet is just a way of prolonging that not eating carbohydrates, but also getting nutrients in. Yeah.
But in ketogenic diet, people are eating there's meat and fish and chicken.
Yes, but not sugar, not carbohydrates.
Acha. And the diagram will probably look like this, ketones going up like that, the way it's showing.
Yes.
Shiv, what's
Yeah.
the glycerol? What is that?
Glycerol, yeah. Sugar?
Glycerol is it's a carbohydrate that is, I don't know exactly why they're measuring glycerol in this study.
And why it's going up?
The significance
Either
of
the
it, I'm not
fastest.
sure.
It plateaus out though.
Huh?
It is plateauing out here. Matlab, initially it goes down, then it goes tiny bit up, and then is a plateau.
Basically, what they're highlighting here are just sources of energy that the body has.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so
see.
glycerol is a carbohydrate source.
I
But
see.
So
if
the
we go to
body
the
is
hormones
releasing it.
here, we can see the most important thing that's happening is that the insulin levels come down very quickly. Yeah.
Yes.
And then beyond that, we have these other hormones, glucagon, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Essentially, what these are hormones that keep you alert and
Shiv, I'm
awake
not seeing the
and
B.
motivated. Sorry?
I can see the chart A very well, but the chart B, can you move it a little bit this way so I can see the whole thing?
That's weird. I can see it perfectly.
Really? Oh,
Hmm.
maybe
I'm not
I need
sure
to
why.
change this. You know what?
Yeah,
The
I
view
see it.
thing I might have to change.
Yeah, I think
You might have to move
I
around
got
like
it.
the
I got it.
faces.
I got it. Now I got
Yeah,
it.
on Zoom.
Sorry. It's a good chart. Very good chart.
Hey, Praveen, one thing here I'm seeing, and I do not know whether, not Praveen, Shiv,
Yeah.
whether you're advocating this, right? So I'm seeing the insulin go only around the, 16-hour kind of a, 12 between 12 and 24, while most of us are doing 16-8. I'm doing 16-8. Okay.
Mhm.
So it is not sufficiently, at that 16 point, I eat again. So then this whole thing would spike back up again. So, so there's no time for this extended period of insulin going down. So is it something like, okay, you start off with 16-8, but then over a period of time, you kind of increase the time when you do not eat? Is that
Yeah, I mean, one way that you can sort of experiment with the longer fasts is to say once a week, do a longer fast. So
Longer
if
meaning what?
If 16-8 becomes sort of your baseline, just normal way of eating,
Oh.
then just keep that there. That's your baseline normal way of eating, right? That's what you always come back to. Yeah. But then if one day a week, so let's say on a Sunday or maybe a Saturday or whatever's your like off day or whatever it is, for you in your schedule, you do let's say at first like a full 24-hour fast, right? Or let's say if Sunday is your day to do a longer fast, on Saturday, right? You have your dinner early, you sleep, and then on Sunday, you just go on water and sleep early. Then you break your fast on Monday morning. Right? That's essentially a 36-hour fast. So you're kind of getting pretty like over here, pretty down, right? So I mean, this is just an option, right? So I'm just sort of suggesting that maybe one day a week, once a week, you pick a time to experiment with a slightly longer fast, and you pick a time that works for you.
Yeah.
And just start maybe if you are the 16 hours hard, maybe try for like a 20-hour or for one day.
it's
or like
already
a full
happening.
24 for one day or
Yeah.
whatever it is for you.
Shiv, for me, it's hard to do it that way because of my diabetes. And then I'm messed up with my pills. I don't take the pills and I'm like, oh, should I take the pill? Should I not take the pill? And if I take the pill, then it goes way down the sugar. If I don't take the pill, then I'm worried that, oh my God, is it going up? My sugars are going up. So it's kind of.
Yeah.
too prolonged a fast.
Well, this is about,
Scary.
that's about practice, right? That's about learning how your body is reacting,
Yeah.
right? If you know that when you take the pill, your blood sugar comes down low, so low that it's uncomfortable that you need to eat.
Yes.
And when you don't take the pill, it's only worry that you have. I don't understand why you would take the pill.
Yeah, I've stopped it
You know
now.
what I mean?
I've
Like,
stopped
it's
taking the pills. Many times.
one you have a real side effect, and the other is coming from a worry that there might be some sort of side effect, and there's nothing real happening there, right? If you're not eating sugar, what's going to bring your sugars up high? Only if you have some sort of adrenaline response that's stress, right?
I think it can be the
Cortisol
cortisol
response,
and the glucagon,
right?
which can probably do that too.
Yeah, so essentially what you need to learn how to do is what? Relax when you're not, because you're stressing yourself out. And that's
Yes.
causing for your sugars to come up. So what you need to
Yes.
learn how to get a grip on your mental issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And that takes practice. So it's not something that is going to come immediately. It's something that you have to practice because you're used to taking the medicine. So you have to get used to dealing with life without it and knowing that you'll be fine, you know?
Yeah.
Because the medicine is what's causing issues
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
You're just scared to not take it.
Yeah.
And then it's the fear that's causing issues.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Shiv, what's the role of those two hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine?
Epinephrine is adrenaline.
Oh, I see.
Right? So it's sort of it's like to jolt you up. And when you're fasting, the epinephrine is released in order to like get you to go out and work and get food, right?
Yeah.
And that's the cortisol also, and also the norepinephrine, right? The norepinephrine is like what sort of drives your sensations in the body.
Okay.
So basically, when you're fasting, you have this like a heightened sensation, and that's from this norepinephrine.
Yes. Okay.
So people who have high blood pressures, I have friends, they may be having an extra issue with all this, right? The epinephrine and the norepinephrine going up and creating trouble with their blood pressures. Along with diabetes, of course, is an extra something to worry about. I mean, it's
See, what the epinephrine and norepinephrine will do is just help in keeping the blood sugars up a little bit, help in releasing sugars that the body has stored inside, like in the muscles, right? It'll help in creating the gluconeogenesis and in the liver, right? So it's going to just create these ways of dealing with the discomfort of the fasting, right? That's why you get this stress response and why you get these increased hormones in order to create more comfort in the body, a sensation of comfort, and to get you moving, get you doing things, make you alert, right? So it's not like the same thing as a intense prolonged stress response, right? So if you're like doing a prolonged fast and the cortisol is up and the epinephrine is up for a prolonged period of time, that might be different. That might be pretty bad, right? But we're talking about a 72-hour fast right here, not like a 40-day fast.
Yeah.
So next.
So what happens? Can I just
Yeah, please.
When you're fasting, the hormones start interacting and getting rid of what the body is holding on to, most likely what the fat and the carbs. Why isn't, because I've been fasting every other day, I would assume I'd be losing much more weight. Why it's like plateau. I mean, it was high in the beginning, 4 pounds, and then it went down to 2 pounds, and now it's down to 1 pound, and it might not be any more pounds. I don't know. I'm wondering why it's going downhill rather than, because it's
Well, this will sort of explain it over here.
okay.
This chart here. So like when you're first getting used to fasting here, right, in the first 72 hours, and if you're, repeating this process, then you have less of this first stage to keep repeating, right? Which is that utilization of the carbohydrates, that excess carbohydrates that are stored in the body, in the muscles and in the liver, and also in the last meal that one just ate, right? So the utilization of that carbohydrate is the first thing that happens. The next thing that happens, as you can see, over time, is that over time, the body tries to conserve energy by decreasing the metabolism. And that's why over time, the body, as you get used to fasting, will burn less energy over time. That's why I suggest that cyclical way of eating if your goal is weight loss. Because in order to sort of trick the body, in order to keep the metabolism higher, you need to have days when you're eating more calories that are immediately followed by days when you're eating less calories, and then cycle that. So
Let come. Okay. Let me get you.
then essentially cycle through that
Let me get you up.
Increasing and decreasing calories over time to make sure that the body's metabolism doesn't decrease over time. But it's also important to note that in this first stage, when your body is getting rid of carbohydrates, like right, if you look at this, even the word carbohydrate has that word hydrate in it, right? And that's because these carbs, they hold on to water. And that's why at the beginning, when you're fasting, you may lose a lot of water weight. And that's when the carbohydrates come out, they also drag a lot of water with them. Water and minerals and other things that come with that water. Right? So that's why at first one may experience sort of a rapid weight loss. But that's not to be confused necessarily with sustained weight loss, because it can be largely water weight at the beginning. Over time, though, that fat will be lost. That's just more of a consistently and slow long-term thing. Right? If you want to basically increase the metabolism while this process is happening, in order to make sure that this burning of the fat doesn't keep coming down and down and down and down, so because you're keeping that metabolic rate up, then you need to cycle the carbohydrates in and the calories, and that basically creates this spike in terms of the metabolism. And then when you remove the carbohydrates again, you're going to start losing the metabolic rate slowly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then we come over here to this next graph, and we can see in terms of what's happening with the carbohydrates here what's happening in the body specifically with those carbohydrates and with what's replacing them over time. So when you eat, you get that big spike in glucose from the food, right? But then you see this gray line here, this one here, this is glucose that's being released slowly over time from the muscles and the liver, from what's called glycogenolysis, which is the breakdown of glycogen.
From the liver?
Glycogen is just stored sugar in the muscles and the liver, primarily. And so that, as you stop eating, that sugar will slowly be released into the body over time. And as the body runs out of sugar from the food, and then sugar from the stored glycogen, slowly it will start producing its own sugar here. You can see this is the gluconeogenesis line, and this is coming from the breakdown of protein into sugars from the liver. Along with that comes a breakdown of the fats and an increase in ketone production and free fatty acid production. And this whole period here from when the body is switching from the utilization of carbohydrates here to primarily the utilization of fatty acids and ketones happens over here, about at 24 to 36 hours.
Oh, interesting.
So you can see that switch happening right about here, right about there. Yeah, between 24 to 36 hours. And that's why between 36 to 72 hours, that's sort of the ideal time if you want a reset of the hormones.
What do you mean?
You can even do one of these 36 to 72 hour fasts even as frequently as one per week. But you don't have to, right? It's just, I'm just saying, as frequently as that you can do, if
So
you
Shiv,
can handle that. Yeah.
if we are doing this, I'm not going to do this part, but if somebody has to do this 72-hour fast, how much roughly weight will they lose weekly?
Yeah, you can't say that. It's not about how much weight you're gonna lose. It's about restoring the hormonal balance.
Okay.
You understand? You're like a 100-pound woman is not going to be necessarily even trying to lose weight, right? And like a 500-pound man might lose a lot of weight, right? So it's you can't just necessarily give a weight number for a 72-hour fast, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't
But
mean
that could cause other side effects like feeling dizzy and all that, right? Obviously.
Well, the dizzy feeling will come if, for example, you're getting dehydrated. That dehydration will come from the loss of the carbohydrates, right? Which might bring, of course, the loss of water and the loss of minerals. And that's why when you're fasting, it's important that you're drinking water, and it can help to have some minerals also.
How about exercise? People who are exercising along with it.
Yeah, that's fine. What do you mean?
I mean, they should do exercise, otherwise you lose muscles. You don't want to be losing muscles.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are natural ways that when you're fasting, at least for the first 72 hours, the body will release hormones that protect it from losing muscle or bone density, like release of human growth hormone and other stuff like this actually is very much increased when one is fasting. But yeah, if you want to further prevent the loss of muscle, it can help to do just basically low repetition strength training.
My, my intuition tells me that if I'm going to be in such long fasting durations,
Yes.
the normal tendency of my body would be to minimize activities so that,
Yes.
so that
Yeah.
is,
So like low volume, relatively low volume,
Weight.
high intensity strength training
Mhm.
would be what one would do. So like for example, one, maybe 2 sets of building to a pretty high weight to failure, essentially, just in one set. So low volume training, essentially, is what one would want to do. And that would essentially help also with the release of growth hormone and the depth of sleep quality.
Does low volume mean low repetitions? Is that what it means?
Yes.
Okay.
Meaning like somewhere between 5 to 12 repetitions in 1 to 2 sets to failure or something like this.
Okay.
16.8 is basically the ground floor or even the basement, right? Sure.
Sorry?
16.8 is basically just, the ground floor or even the basement, I guess.
It's a good like starting space to get real benefit from the fasting.
Mhm.
But yeah, I consider it sort of like the foundation to work from there. Once you get stable with 16.8, then you start, experimenting with more intense things. But if 16.8 is difficult, I
This
think
is
it's
really good.
more useful for people to focus on just stabilizing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're doing 3 days of fasting and you're doing the high intensity, the strength training, do
Yes.
you just do day 1, skip day 2, and do day 3? Because you're usually supposed to skip a day when you're doing strength training. Or do you do all 3 days? Does it matter?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is that you would do your strength training on like right before you eat. So don't do strength training on your days when you're fasting and then not eat after. Yeah. You want, when you're on the days when you're actually not eating, don't do strength training necessarily then. You can do like walking. You can go for a walk. You can do some gardening. You can do light things, right? But don't do like strength training necessarily then, because you want to be eating immediately after you do strength training.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
Okay.
that strength training, the effects of it will carry over through the whole week if it's intense strength training. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that means even if you're on Monday, you eat, you do your strength training in the morning, you eat kind of normally on Monday, and then on Tuesday, you do your fasting. Yeah. Then
Okay.
the effects from Monday will still be carrying over to Tuesday.
To Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because you're doing it for 3
Yep.
days.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Hey, Shiv,
3 days
Yes.
won't be easy.
Look, even if I have to do, 16.8, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Um, look, one good thing has happened is that my insulin consumption has gone down by more than 50%. Like I don't have to.
Right.
But even when I'm dosing a lot lower, right? Even when I'm
Yes.
dosing, there have been a couple of hypoglycemia attacks because of which I had to break the fast and have a fruit
I
juice.
see.
A
I
fruit
see.
juice. Okay. So I'm finding that the next easy target for me is like 1 meal a day kind of a thing,
Yes.
the kind of thing that Praveen spoke about a couple of sessions ago, where you have a 12 to 4 window and, just do a meal. So I'm just kind of wondering what may be a good way to go there, is it to keep it broad enough, 24, that would be the kind of, I'm finding that I no longer have an appetite for 2 large meals a day. Right?
Okay.
So,
Nice.
given that, I think that the next step may be to go into that kind of, try 24, but what I'm kind of struggling with is how to kind of make that transition, how to kind of go take that next step. So
Are you talking about difficulty in terms of how to incorporate the medication into that plan, or
medication is only one part. That medication is the easy part, Shiv.
Okay,
The real thing is like what would be, how do I, maybe it's my struggle that, what kind of, how do I make the, how do
what
I
I would say, to make it easier, if you have, let's say, your first meal of the day be a liquid meal,
yeah, that's
And
a
then-
suggestion, yeah.
and then you have your second meal be a solid meal, and that's
Yeah.
it.
I'm interpreting that first meal, yeah, it could be that way, right?
Yeah.
A lighter meal and then a solid meal. Kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So your light meal being like just a liquid, like a smoothie, like a liquid meal, something you
Soup.
make in the blender.
Soup would
Soup. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, if you want, you can have both meals be like that, but at least the first one.
Yeah. No, if I don't get my carb fix, then it kind of has its own, crazy ramifications.
Okay, so getting back to this now, in terms of the hormonal changes happening, we talked about, of course, the importance of lowering insulin and the whole hormonal cascade that comes from this. Second, we talked about the change in all the stress hormones, so cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine and the other hormones that help to keep one awake and alert and feeling just aware and ready to do things. And then on the other side of that spectrum, we have that increase in the hormones that help you to relax deeply as well. So not only the hormones that keep you awake and alert, but also the hormones that help you to sleep deeply. So like HGH, human growth hormone, melatonin, right? Melatonin, which is released in order to help to maintain the circadian rhythm and help to keep one sleeping and waking at the appropriate time in rhythm with the sun. Yeah, melatonin is released during sunset in order to make us sleepy. And when we're fasting, that is accentuated, that response.
In other words, we'll be more sleepy.
In other words, when you sleep, you will sleep deeper.
Oh.
And you might even need less sleep when you're fasting.
You notice that?
Yeah.
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 Oh, wow.
So this are all I sort of, I call this emotional balance. Yeah, so all of this hormonal balance and hormonal shifting, it helps to create a sense of emotional stability. Next, we get to the physical detoxification process. And this is a sort of a way of, again, facilitating the general detoxification of the body. And this is a diagram that, again, I found. Someone else made this. Oops, am I getting an echo here?
Yeah.
Can someone... All right, I think that's gone. So if we look at this diagram, we can see sort of a simplistic view of what is happening. I have to keep moving around all our faces so I can see everything. All right. All right. So if we look at the diagram, we can see where things come from that build in the body. This is sort of talking about toxins, you know, generally entering through the lungs or through the skin or through what we're eating. But it's also true that just our body generates metabolic waste just through the process of living also, and that's sort of missing from this diagram. So through all of this, you know, things that are coming from stressors that are coming from our environment, as well as the stressors that are just building up from our body, within our body through the natural metabolic processes of living life and eating and digesting food and everything. All of this generates metabolic waste that has to be dealt with. Yeah. And this is just this natural process of detoxification that is actually quite complicated, but, you know, this is just kind of, you know, giving a simplistic view of what's happening within the body in terms of how it is getting rid of all of these metabolic toxins, you could say, that build up in the body, metabolic waste. And the main organ that is dealing with it is the liver. The way that when the liver is sort of overwhelmed with way too much to deal with, it stores excess in the fatty tissue, adipose tissue, in the bones, as well as in the brain, in the nervous system. Not just the brain, like in the head, like this says, but in the nerves, all over the body. So in the adipose tissue and the brain, this is where often the metabolic waste that is fat soluble will be stored. Whereas within the muscles, as well as in the bones, this is where a lot of the water-soluble toxins will be stored. But generally, if a body is not sort of in this state of overwhelm and dealing with too much that it can't process, then this toxins will be able to exit the body through the kidneys, through the lungs, through the eyes and the nose, through the lymphatic fluid, and through the skin coming out of the lymph, as well as through the colon coming out of the lymph. So usually in a healthy body, through all of these different mechanisms, the body will be able to just deal with the waste that's building up. But if it cannot, then it will store the waste in order to be able to hopefully get rid of it later. Right? But often, you know, the weight gain that we have or that we're experiencing is actually serving sort of a protective function of sorts, in that we need all of that adipose tissue in order to be able to store the metabolic waste away from the brain, right? And away from the organs, right? And actually that excess adipose tissue is serving a protective function, right? And so in order to get rid of that excess adipose tissue, often we try to just target that excess adipose tissue, but we don't realize it's serving a function. And so in order to get rid of it, what we need to do is focus, instead of focusing on the fat, we need to focus on the metabolic waste. And in this detoxification pathway, facilitating this, and helping the body to actually get rid of what it's trying to get rid of. Not just through fasting, but through these other sort of ways of facilitating detoxification. And there are all sorts of mechanisms that or practices that we can experiment with that may or may not work, depending on our situation, that we can try. And, you know, from yoga and Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, ultimately, it all comes down to lifestyle change and body care techniques in order to be able to just manage the stress of even the fasting, and helping to create a sense of balance again in the body. So with yoga, we can get into deep breathing, stretching, and the postures, the asana practice. The whole point of the asana practice is to be able to breathe into different areas of the body. Exercise and weightlifting, I also consider just a part of one's yoga practice, as well as a sitting meditation or prayer practice. From Ayurveda, as well as traditional Chinese medicine, we have all sorts of different practices in order to help with the detoxification process. So not just fasting, but juice fasting, or nutritional changes, herbal medicines, abhyanga and deep tissue massage, self-myofascial release techniques, neti, which is a rinsing of the nasal cavity, or enema, which is a rinsing of the colon, acupuncture, which is similar to abhyanga in terms of dealing with the limbic system and the way that energy flows through the skin, and that affects how energy flows through the internal parts of the body and the organs. And so all of these are different ways of facilitating the detoxification process. Do you have any questions on this before I continue?
Yeah.
No? All right.
I just want to say one thing,
Yeah.
that couple of Shiv's patients, you know, they are on YouTube. They had leukemia, you know, cancer, and they were open to getting interviewed on the television. And they did all these methods, including the abhyanga, which is body massage with, I think, oil, and then doing the enema with chlorella and spirulina and all that. And they did great in their numbers. You know, in terms of CLL, you count what is that, white count level, which remained like constant for extended period of time, because there's no other treatment for that. So that's just by the way, and it's on YouTube, and people benefit with that. You know, a lot of people. One of them patient is still alive. She's doing great. The other one had COVID, and unfortunately, COVID took his life. So, but that's just to say that other people can benefit with what you do with your body, you know, and how somebody can help you with these kind of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, all right, the next aspect that we're talking about is spiritual balance. So we talked about emotional balance or hormonal balance. We talked about physical balance and detoxification. And next we get to this spiritual balance or mental detoxification. And this brings us to meditation or prayer, which can be sort of, you know, everyone has their own thing and their own way of doing this that works for them, and their own, you know, everybody is pretty unique with this in terms of figuring out something that works for them to connect with their own internal processes. And everybody's mind works in a pretty different way. But for me, I'll share with you that for what works for me is focusing on filtering all my thoughts through the attitude of gratitude, appreciation, and unconditional love. And for me, it's these attitudes that help to create coherency in the thought structure and the belief structure, and help in aligning everything in my life with who I am. So for me, that meditation on this attitude and filtering everything that comes through this attitude of starting with gratitude and incorporating appreciation and eventually building up to unconditional love for all that is, I find that to be the most effective way to deal with stressful thoughts and bring that sense of spiritual balance in. So just to summarize, when we're fasting, what this is doing is stopping the digestion, right? And when we put that pause on the digestion and all that energy that the body's putting into digesting food, we upregulate the detoxification pathways of the body, helping the body to let go of things, not just on the physical level, but also on the emotional and the spiritual level as well. And all of this together helps in balancing the hormones and bringing about that balanced sense of overall holistic health. So what we are assuming in this is that we're incorporating over the long term a method of progressive lifestyle change, and that we're dealing with stress as it's coming with adequate, body and mind care.
Here, can
And
I say
that's
one
pretty
thing?
much it. So sorry, did you say something?
I just wanted to comment one thing.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier that your body is entering fasting when you've had the hunger spike due to ghrelin, and then after that has completely died down, that means at that time your body is entering fasting, right?
That's for me, that's the signal that I use. Yeah.
Okay.
That sort of tells me that as soon as I get through that hunger spike, that's when the insulin is starting to come down, right? And the metabolism is starting to come down. Metabolism has already peaked during that hunger period. And now I'm fasting.
I think it's so important to have that in your mind, right? If you're planning to do a fast, then when you get hungry, you should realize, okay, I'm going to, I need to hang on to this, past the hunger for another 2-3 hours till I don't feel hungry. And that means that's when I've started to fast, really.
Yeah.
It's a mentally, if you're ready for that, then I think there's a greater chance of being successful. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
See,
And
and
as I also notice that for myself, that as I get through that process, there's a lot of emotional and even physical and mental things that just come up very quickly at that time. It's like a stressful time,
Yes.
right? Where you just notice a lot of things and you just have to deal with all these things all at once. And that's the time to do it,
Yeah.
And Shiv, I have noticed these days, these doctors, many places, the obesity, so-called the obesity fixing doctors. And what they're using is they're giving these shots. And I believe it inhibits your appetite. But it causes a lot of side effects too, and nobody mentions the side effects. So, have you read about that injection?
Yeah. What about it?
What do you think about it? I personally think it's a very bad deal because it can cause pancreatitis.
I think, ultimately, these are the habits that have to change, whether or not you're taking, allopathic medications that may or may not help or assist you along the way. Eventually this has to be done. If you're getting gastric bypass or you're getting, semaglutide injections, or whatever it is, it might help in the short term to lose weight if that's exactly that's what you're looking for is 6 months of weight loss. But eventually you get to that point where if those habits that created the issue have not changed, that issue will come back, and it happens to everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
So ultimately, this maybe that could be a part of it if you're also doing this, but then again, if you're doing this, you don't need that either.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's happening when your stomach is growling? Because there are times it growls and other times it doesn't growl, but I'm still hungry. So
It's crying for food.
Well, like in Ayurvedic theory, this is just basically excess gas,
really,
and other things that are just moving through the body, or areas of connective tissue that are just sort of shifting around. It's just, my stomach makes so much noise. My parents laugh sometimes because they can hear it from like across the room when I'm fasting, that my stomach starts speaking.
And you're not even a big guy. You're just
Yeah, but it's just I can like literally feel what's happening is just, things are just moving around. It's normal. Things move around.
yeah. Oh,
Hey, Shiv,
Yeah.
I'd like to go back and study the graph and have it as a reference. If you're okay with sharing the, PDF version of the deck.
Yeah. I can send it out.
and Sham, you won't have trouble sharing this thing, whatever Shiv has recorded now on YouTube, right?
No,
Margie has no problem.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you
one
have no
other
issues
thing I
either.
wanted to mention, if a couple of slides, if you just go back.
Yeah.
But Shiv, if you put all this on YouTube, they'll have it.
Yeah, that's fine. Here,
No,
which one?
it's not the information. It's the personal information. Lata, if you understand what I'm saying.
No, but there's no personal
Yeah,
there,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that right now.
Yeah, okay, all right. So
I'll get to that. I'll tell
not
them.
this one. If you go to the next slide, I think. What's the next
This one?
No, the one not before, after.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. So this particular one.
Yeah.
Imagine you're familiar with CIMC, right? Cambridge Insight Meditation Center.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't know too much about that specifically.
Yeah. So there they have something called METTA, Meta.
Yeah.
Meta mindfulness meditation, but it's called meta meditation.
Huh.
It's all about, outflowing, stuff like, feeling okay, wishing other people well, the universe well, and all that stuff. I just want to bring to everybody's attention over here. That's, it's amazing. We are usually not very generous in our outflow, to the universe, to other people, and all that stuff. But when you land up finishing such an exercise, the kind of experience one has is mind blowing.
Definitely.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. I feel that with, for example, the reason I focus on these attitudes of gratitude, appreciation, and love is that these are choices. Right? It's a conscious decision to be grateful or not. And that is something that we choose that can affect us in every moment, which is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. The glass half full, half empty kind of
Yeah.
attitude,
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
All right. So
Hey,
before I stop the recording, are there any questions that on all of this?
Are you going to stop the recording now?
Yeah, unless we have any questions. Okay, I'm going to stop. 1 second.
Zoom. Yeah, I came in for an